Hello, everyone. Remember what it was like when life was normal? There's one thing I learned from this whole pandemic. It's that a lot of things that I kind of believed were true about other people's lifestyle habits are not true. I just simply took it for granted because, well, that's the way I live my life, so everyone else is the same. But one of the things that I recently discovered that's very different about me and a lot of other Americans is that I am used to doing my grocery shopping trips, maybe once every 1 week or once every 2 weeks. Before life as we know it changed, the way I used to do my grocery shopping is I would do one big trip at the beginning of the month, and that's where I'd stock up on like my pantry staples, my freezer staples, my refrigerator staples. I'd look at everything that I'm about to run out of, and I'd restock up so that I wouldn't wait till I run out of something before I buy it. This also goes for like toiletries and cleaning supplies. I would do that like at the beginning of the month. And then in the rest of the month, maybe once a week, maybe once every other week, I'd go out to the store just to pick up a few fresh items, like maybe some fresh herbs, some fresh fruits and vegetables, maybe some fresh dairy or some fresh meat. But for the most part, I already was used to doing my trips in big chunks, but apparently a lot of other Americans are not like that. I watch Wheezy Waiter. He's a very entertaining vlogger, by the way. And I was just kind of shocked when he and his wife were talking about where they were trying meal prepping for a month or a week or something, and how they say that they go shopping every single day for groceries. That just seems like, I thought only Europeans did that. It's like, I can understand if that's your culture, or if you have a small refrigerator, or if you don't have a job and you actually have the time to like shop every day. That could be quite pleasant, but that's just so foreign to me. So I just wanted to outline some of the strategies that I use to help me shop for groceries less often. And if you're one of those people who's finding yourself like wanting to go to the grocery store every day or every other day or more frequently than you're supposed to, maybe this will help. So the first thing that I do is I plan all my meals. This might sound a bit psychopathic, but I actually write out breakfast, lunch, dinner for every single day, and I actually plan out what I'm going to eat for all of those days. I actually like this because I am a planner, and I also enjoy looking forward to things. So that's just part of my personality, so it comes naturally to me. It might not come naturally to you, but try it. And you can get really specific like I do, write out breakfast, lunch, dinner, and write exactly every meal you're having. Or you could just say, okay, well, there's 2 people in my household. I want to shop for, 1 week in advance. Okay, Kat, you're gonna have to not be there. I wanna shop for, 1 week for 2 people, and we each eat 3 meals a day. So that's 6 times 7. So I need to get 42 meals worth of groceries. And so you can just list 42 meals and start that way. Or you can think of dishes that you want to make. Maybe there's a lasagna that you like, and then there's a stir-fried chicken recipe that you like, and then there's ratatouille vegetable stew that you like, and then look at the recipes and look at the serving size on the recipes and just see how many servings of each recipe you're gonna have. Do that math. I know math, right? And figure out how many meals total you're just going to need to buy, because knowing that much already helps. And the second thing that I consider is I veer towards big dishes that will feed many people, dishes that have many servings. And usually these are also the kind of dishes that mix leftovers that freeze very well. So these are things like a giant lasagna, anything that's baked in a casserole dish. Lasagna, mac and cheese, tuna noodle casserole if you're into that, hamburger helper if you're into that, enchiladas, a big beef stew, a big vegetable stew, a big pot of chili, something like that. Curries. The general rule is if it takes a long time to cook, it probably tastes good leftover, and it probably also freezes well. So the reason to make a lot of dishes that, have a lot of servings is that, one, you just don't have to think of as many dishes to cook, so it's less work for you. And the other thing is that if you miscalculate for some reason and you get too much food, that actually happens to me a lot, then that gives you the freedom to freeze some of your food for later. The third thing that I consider when writing a list for my groceries is I veer towards shelf-stable ingredients. Shelf-stable ingredients are anything that you find in the center of the grocery store. It's not in a refrigerated area, it's not in a frozen area. It's not in the produce area. It's going to be like in the middle of the store. And unfortunately, a lot of that stuff also tends to be less good for you, but there are some ways around that. So I'm talking beans, rice, flour, canned fruits and vegetables, boxed, like instant things like boxed pilaf or boxed mac and cheese, things like that. Even ramen, canned soups, those kinds of things. And again, if you want to be a little healthier, don't buy the processed things like canned soups or stews or mac and cheese or anything, and stick more towards the whole foods, the whole rice, the whole legumes, the whole flour and stuff like that. If you can find flour. Nowadays, you can't find any flour. Cereal, nuts, dried fruits, those kinds of things. Just veer towards ingredients that do not need any refrigeration or to be frozen. Now, I said stay away from the produce aisle for this, but also shelf-stable items also include root vegetables. They will last if you have a nice cold pantry that's cool and dark and dry. Your root vegetables will last for months in there sometimes. If not, you can always keep them in the fridge. I always have a giant bag of carrots, some onions, some kind of potato, and other kinds of root vegetables like sweet potatoes or parsnips or turnips or rutabagas or beets or celery root. Any of those root vegetables will last a very, very long time, even on your shelf. So veer towards those kind of items and not towards the kinds of items that are going to go bad in a few days. The fourth thing that I consider is I veer towards items that can be frozen or that already are frozen. So items that already are frozen would be things like frozen dinners, if you're that kind of person. Nothing wrong with having a frozen dinner or two in your freezer for a rainy day, but also frozen vegetables, frozen fruits, ice cream, stuff that's just ready to eat like that. And things that can be frozen, fresh meat, fresh fish, that can be frozen. Any vegetable that you've seen in the frozen section, you can buy it fresh and eat some of it fresh and freeze the rest of it for later. Like you can buy fresh broccoli, eat some of it fresh, it is better fresh, and then freeze the rest of it for later. So the general rule I have for whether or not something can be frozen, and by something I mean an ingredient, is if you intend on cooking it or if it can be cooked in the future, then you can freeze it. So broccoli, you can freeze it if you're going to cook it after you've defrosted it. Onions, you can freeze them if you're going to cook them after you've defrosted them. Tomatoes, you can freeze them if you're going to cook them after you've defrosted them. They're kind of gross if you defrost them and then eat them raw. Things that you cannot freeze is something like lettuce, fresh herbs. Like if you're going to cook the fresh herbs, sure, but if you want to, I've frozen cilantro, for example, and then I've cooked it in enchiladas. But if I wanted to use fresh cilantro in like a pico de gallo, that would be gross if I froze it and then defrosted it. And like I said, something like lettuce, if you wanted to freeze ingredients and then make a salad, that would be disgusting. So just if you're gonna cook it afterwards, or if you can cook it afterwards, then you can freeze it. So my fifth rule is that all ingredients that have a shorter shelf life get cooked first. So I've suggested I have another video on how to not throw away food. These two concepts kind of go hand in hand. If you're not used to buying a lot of your groceries at once, you could just buy a bunch of groceries and then half of them go bad before you can even use them and you wind up throwing them away. So you have to be really strategic. You have to think, okay, this milk is going to expire soon, or this milk is going to go bad a week and a half after I open it. I'll have to be sure to use it by then. Or this cheese, once I break that seal, it's going to start going bad in a couple weeks, so I need to use it up in a couple of weeks. Oh, this lettuce is going to not be very good after 5 days, so I should prioritize using that. I suggest having spots in your refrigerator that are for the things that need to be used up faster, or simply just put those things towards the front of your fridge so you will go, aha, lettuce, I need to use that before it goes bad. A general rule for produce and how long it lasts is the squeeze test. Just think about it. Anything that if you squeeze it, it gets destroyed does not last very long. So things like raspberries, strawberries, fresh fruit in general, it's not very good after a few days. Or it goes bad, it starts rotting after a few days because it just squishes when you squish it. But now think about a zucchini. If you squeeze it, it might get a little bruised, but it doesn't get squished to smithereens. So yeah, zucchini will last a week or more in your fridge, depending on how fresh it was when you buy it. Now think of something like a carrot. Squeeze with all your might and you won't even bruise it. And carrots indeed have a very, very, very long shelf life in your fridge. So just kind of think mentally about, don't actually physically squeeze your produce, but think mentally in your head, the squeeze test. If I squeezed this would it stay intact? If the answer is no, you should probably eat it sooner. The sixth rule that I apply is that I try to pad out my meal planning with shelf-stable snacks and meals. Like I said earlier, I'm actually more inclined to think that I can eat more food than I actually can, and then I find myself with a lot of extra food. So sometimes I overcompensate by not getting enough food. So I kind of do like in bingo, I'll leave some squares blank, I'll leave some meals blank, and if it turns out that I don't have extra leftovers to eat, because I made too much casserole and now I have leftovers. If it turns out that that's not the case, then aha, I can have ice cream for this meal. Yes, I have ice cream for meals. I'm a grown-up. Or I could have cereal for a meal. That's something that's very shelf-stable. Or I could just have some ramen for this meal because that's shelf-stable. Or here, Marie Callender's frozen pot pie. I can have that for a meal every once in a while. Or, maybe trail mix or just nuts. Sometimes I've had a meal of just nuts. It's good. Or if you're Joshua, my husband, you just eat a bag of Sun Chips. Not the healthiest thing, but it'll get you by. Number 7, and this is the most important thing of all, and why doesn't everybody do this? But I know some people don't do this. Make a list. Write out your grocery list. I don't know why. I just don't know why people don't do this. Okay, and now I can kind of understand, I'm going to backpedal a little and say, well, I can understand why people might not make lists nowadays because there are so many shortages everywhere. I can put flour on my grocery list until I'm blue in the face, but if they don't actually have flour at the grocery store, I'm not going to be able to buy it. So, I understand that aspect of it. But yeah, it's especially nowadays, it's nice to have some plan B and plan C within your shopping list. It could be buy flour or oatmeal or cornmeal. So you're bound to get some kind of starch that you can cook into some kind of muffin or bread if that was your plan. I also like to write out, when I write out my grocery list, I put all of the items together. I think about hopefully you're really familiar with your grocery store and you know where everything is generally. And I write my list out in the order of where the grocery store is. I'll have all the produce together, I'll have all the dry goods together, I'll have all the dairy together, I'll have all the meat together. I'll have all the frozen things together at the very end and the dairy together at the very end so that they don't get warm while I'm doing all of my shopping. And that way my shopping trip doesn't take as long as it has to. And especially nowadays, it's nice to get in and out of the store as quickly as you can so you can avoid being around people. So write a list. So the 8th thing is actually something I discovered recently. It was just, why didn't I discover this earlier? But when you're buying perishable items, it's actually, while you're not going to save money doing this, you might save money by not throwing away food. Buy your perishable items in smaller, separate containers. And what I mean by that is instead of buying a big block of cheese that once you break that seal, the clock starts ticking and it goes bad in 2 weeks, buy 3 smaller sealed containers of cheese, because that way you open one, the clock starts ticking on that little block of cheese, and you have to use that little block of cheese within 2 weeks, but the other 2 blocks of cheese are still going to be fine for months until whatever their sell-by date is. Same goes with milk. Instead of buying a whole gallon of milk, if you're one of those people who takes a long time to go through milk, go embrace that and buy 4 quarts of milk to last you the whole month instead of 1 gallon, because once you break the seal on that gallon of milk, it's not going to be good past a week and a half to 2 weeks. The 9th thing that I consider is, as soon as you get home, when you already start putting away your groceries, be strategic when you put them away. Think about the things that you're not going to use for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and just put those straight in the freezer before they can start to even think about going bad. Just know, you know what, I'm not going to use this chuck roast until week number 3 when I make stew, so it's going straight in the freezer. I did that actually. I went to the butcher last week and I stocked up on a bunch of meat, and I bought some of my meat already frozen because I knew I wasn't going to use it until later anyway. It would be in the freezer anyway, so I just bought it frozen. But I bought a chuck roast that I was going to cut and use part of it in a chili, part of it in a stew during weeks 3 and 4. So I just froze it preemptively because I knew that I wasn't going to be using it before then. So yeah, hopefully you have a freezer and have a lot of room in your freezer. And if you don't have a freezer, I feel you. There have been times in my life where I did not have a freezer. I was living in a garage room and I sort of made myself a makeshift kitchen, and I had a mini fridge which doesn't quite have a freezer that works. So I understand what that's like. And if that's the case for you, you're probably going to have to stick more towards the pantry staples, the canned soups, the beans, the rice, that kind of stuff. And number 10 is more just a habit that's a really good habit to get into just for the future, moving forward. Keep a list. Just a general running list, and always keep abreast of like what you have, what you don't have, and what you're getting low on. And that's the most important thing. I feel like a lot of people wait until they run out of something to buy the replacement. I almost always buy the replacement before I run out of the thing, especially if it's a thing that I like have to have, like tea or cream or something. It's like, oh, I have to have this, and if I run out, I'm gonna be very sad if I don't have my morning cup of tea with cream and sugar. So I'm always make sure that I'm like, I have a whole month's supply of that ahead, so that I'm never caught short. Yeah, if you live with other people, it can be very handy to get a whiteboard with a nice dry erase marker, and that way you can keep like a running tally, like a running list. Like, it's much easier to notice while you're cooking, oh, I'm getting kind of low on flour, and then you write flour on the list while you're in the kitchen on the whiteboard. Harder to remember that if you're just kind of like sitting down the day you're going to go shopping and writing your list. You should be writing your list like throughout the preceding weeks and months. You should already be compiling that list, especially when it comes to things like pantry staples, your flour, your beans, your rice, your canned vegetables and fruits, your canned soups, your freezer staples like frozen peas, your ice cream, your dairy, your cheese, your milk, your potatoes, your carrots, your celery, any of those hearty vegetables that last forever in your fridge. Always restock before you run out. So anyway, if you're struggling with doing your shopping trips less frequently, I hope that this was a little bit helpful. I know like some of these rules are really hard to follow right now with the shelves being empty and like restrictions on when you can and can't go out. Hopefully after we come through this, this is going to be a good wake-up call for a lot of people to self-reflect and realize, I really should change up how I do my grocery shopping. Stay tuned. I'm going to continue to post some of the things that I'm cooking during the quarantine that are pantry friendly. Stay safe and eat some ice cream.